Recently, some of you might have watched the new Disney Plus drama Shogun, which is based in large part on the life of Tokugawa Ieyasu and the lead up to the Battle of Sekigahara. Today, I'm going to take a bit of a look at what happened at Sekigahara on that fateful day in the year 1600. On the morning of October 21st, 1600, in this very valley, in conditions very similar today, very misty, the battle which would decide the future of Japan for over 2 centuries took place at this very location of Sekigahara. Welcome back. I'm now at Ogaki Castle. This was the base of Ishida Mitsunari and the Western Army in the lead up to the Battle of Sekigahara. Ishida Mitsunari's plan was to have the Uesugi delay Tokugawa Ieyasu to the north. However, the Date clan managed to hold up the Uesugi, allowing Ieyasu to make a U-turn and come back towards Sekigahara, which wasn't really Ishida Mitsunari's plan at all. However, Ogaki Castle was a very strong defensible position, and Ieyasu had to decide how to dislodge the Western Army. So he sped a false rumor, and he had it be known through back channels. He was planning to go around and attack Ishida Mitsunari's main castle at Sawayama. Ishida Mitsunari believed these rumors, and he thus left his strong position and headed for the valley of Sekigahara, where he planned to block the advance of the Eastern Army. And thus, the stage was set for the battle which would decide the course of Japanese history. Here we have Mount Maso. This was Ishida Mitsunari's headquarters for the Battle of Sekigahara. He arrived here about 1 a.m. on the morning of October 21st, having fallen for Ieyasu's ruse to draw him out of Ogaki Castle. He had about 88,000 troops in total, though as you have seen, the Mori and the Kobayakawa were of doubtful loyalty. In fact, only about 50% of Ishida Mitsunari's army would actually engage during the battle. The Tokugawa forces had about 88,000, and they were expecting more, but Tokugawa Hidehara had a significant portion of his forces delayed besieging Ueda Castle. So, on paper at least, at the beginning of the battle, both sides were evenly matched. We can see here the anti-cavalry fortifications, which had started coming to use after the Battle of Nagashino in 1575. These allowed arquebus lines to quickly reload and rotate when firing. It's also worth noting that during the Meiji period, with a visiting Prussian general seeing Ishida Mitsunari's battle plan for Sekigahara, he remarked that Ishida Mitsunari should have won, but plans on paper often don't go according to plan. Fukushima Masanori, a general on the eastern side, had been snubbed in the starting lineup. He felt he needed to make amends, so he started hostilities by attacking the Western Army at approximately 7 a.m. on the morning of October 21st. Despite the honor, was a great honor for a samurai to be the first to blood your spear against the enemy. Battle commenced, and it proved to be a very fierce encounter, both sides employing arquebuses and both rarely having a go at each other on this decisive field of Sekigahara. Kobayakawa Hideaki was a nephew of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He had 15,000 troops on Mount Matsuo, and as such he held the key as to who would finally win the Battle of Sekigahara. However, during the Korean War, Ishida Mitsunari, the leader of the Western Army, had complained about Kobayakawa Hideaki's conduct in the Korean campaign. At the time, he was in danger of being ordered to commit seppuku by Hideyoshi. However, Tokugawa Ieyasu had stepped in, and he had advised that Hideaki not be punished for his conduct. So as a result, at the time of the battle, Hideaki felt like he owed Ieyasu something. However, he was in a difficult position. He had to decide whether to betray his family or support the person, Ieyasu, who was responsible for saving his life. However, as the battle wore on, he remained on top of Mount Matsuo, immobile, not moving, and Ieyasu was starting to lose the battle and seriously wanted Hideaki to join in on his side. Mitsunari also was urging Hideaki to join in on his side. So finally, according to legend, what it is said that Ieyasu did was send a group of musketeers up the mountain to fire blanks on Kobaya Hideaki, and also doing spark him into action. When that happened, Kobayakawa gave the fateful order to descend the mountain, and so his 15,000 samurai did so, crashing into the side of the Otani forces, and they were quickly overwhelmed, and at that time other samurai began to defect and join the Eastern Army. And when that happened, the end of Sekigahara was near. And as a side note, it's worth noting that prior to Sekigahara, Kobayakawa Hideaki had been in contact with Ieyasu, and was expressing his willingness to defect during the battle. So as such, Ieyasu was indeed expecting him to change sides at some point. It was only his delay in doing so that caused him to send the arquebusiers forward to help him make up his mind. 2 years after Sekigahara, perhaps plagued by guilt about what he'd done in betraying his family, Kobayakawa Hideaki drank himself to death, literally. He was only 20 years old at the time, despite the fact that his land had been considerably doubled by his betrayal of the Western Army at the Battle of Sekigahara. There was no one to succeed him, and so his lands were absorbed by other clans after his demise. It's said that one of the reasons for Kobaya Hideaki's descent into alcoholism is that he was tormented by the ghost of Otani Yoshitsugu, seen here about to commit seppuku, which was caused by Kobayakawa Hideaki's betrayal during Sekigahara. Here we have a depiction of the Shimazu contingent from southern Kyushu. Ishida Mitsunari had succeeded in annoying their commander, and as such he sat on the sidelines for most of the battle, only committing himself at the end to commit a fighting retreat. Rather than retreating away from the enemy, the Shimazu retreated by charging through them. Though they lost a lot of men, they managed to escape back to Kyushu from the port of Sakai in Osaka. Here we have a depiction of Ishida Mitsunari, the leader of the Western Army. Effectively during this battle, it was like Tokugawa Ieyasu had a mirror behind his back like in a poker game. He knew what cards he held. He knew that the Mori contingent would likely sit on the sidelines and not participate in the battle. He knew that Kobayakawa Hideaki would likely change sides during the battle. So as such, Mitsunari was rarely at something of a disadvantage as to where the loyalties of his army ultimately lay. Films like The Last Samurai in Hollywood erroneously give the image that the samurai didn't use guns, when in fact at the time of Sekigahara, Japan had per capita the largest proportion of guns anywhere in the world at that time. And if you were a true samurai, there was no better way to show your lord that you'd done your job well than by taking as many of your enemies' heads as possible in battle, as we can see here in this depiction. At the end of a battle, it was customary in samurai culture to hold a head viewing ceremony, and after Sekigahara, it was no exception. Sort of an ironic point that many of the generals present on the Tokugawa side were former Toyotomi loyalists. Many had changed sides because of dislike of Ishida Mitsunari and the fact that Ieyasu was in a greater position to reward them for supporting him in winning the battle. Mitsunari's head wasn't among those on the day, but he would be captured sometime later along with a couple of other fugitive Western Army leaders. Before the head viewing ceremony, each individual head was usually washed and prepared to be presentable before the victorious general. This is a depiction of Kuroda Nagamasa, a former Toyotomi loyalist. If you watch my Osaka video, he was responsible for commissioning the screen about what happened after Osaka Castle fell. He was also at one point a Christian, worth noting. Nearby is Konishi Yukinaga's encampment. He was a Christian general on the western side, and as such, after the battle, he would refuse to commit seppuku and would be executed along with Mitsunari shamefully on a Kyoto riverbank. In modern times, a large tree grows over the spot of the head mound where all samurai who died that day, their remains in that sense lie buried. Let us remember them. Sekigahara was one of the most decisive battles in history. It brought the period of civil wars in Japan to an end and ushered in over 2 centuries of the Tokugawa shogunate. Today it's a place of relative peace, filled with nearby residences, but if you ever pass through here, take a moment to contemplate what went on in this field on October 21st, 1600. My name is Christopher Glenn, and you've been watching Chris and Uncensored Japan. See you on the next video.